I've always believed dignity doesn't come from what you wear or where you live, but how quietly you carry pain without letting it harden your heart. I live in the back guest room now. It used to be David's playroom, back when he'd run in here wearing a cape made from my tablecloth and shout, "I'm saving you, Mommy." Strange how time folds in on itself. Now I'm the one quietly pretending to be rescued. It was a Wednesday when I found the pills. The blue-labeled bottle for my arthritis. The one the doctor warned not to skip. I usually kept it beside my bed, on the tray with my evening water. But that morning it was gone. At first I thought I'd misplaced it. My fingers aren't what they used to be. They tremble when I reach too far or hold on too tight. I checked the drawer, the basket, even the floor. Nothing. Then I heard it, voices in the kitchen. The tone of them wasn't harsh, just cold. "She doesn't need all those pills," Rachel said. "She does," David murmured, but without much conviction. "You know how expensive they are, right? And half the time she forgets to take them." Silence. Then Rachel added, "It's not like she's getting any better." My feet moved on their own, slow and careful down the hall. I kept close to the wall, as if the drywall might hide me better than the shadows. The kitchen bin was nearly full. But there, buried under some paper towels and a banana peel, was the orange prescription bottle. My name still on it. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. Just still. I picked it up, rinsed it gently under the sink while they talked about dinner, as if I didn't exist, as if the old woman in the back room were just a line item on a to-do list. When I closed the door to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the pill bottle. A little damp. A little sticky. But still here. Still mine. I swallowed one with the sip of water I had saved from the night before. The next morning, Rachel didn't make breakfast. That used to bother me. I was raised in a time when the smell of coffee meant love. Now the kitchen door stayed shut until nearly 10. David had already gone to work. Rachel's voice came faintly through the door, talking on speakerphone about some yoga class and bone broth. I wondered if her mother had ever skipped her morning meal. When the door finally swung open, Rachel didn't look at me. She just said, "Don't eat too much today. Your blood sugar's always off when you snack too much." Then she closed it again. I smiled politely, though I hadn't eaten anything at all. I sat in my chair by the window for most of the day, watched a squirrel wrestle with a plastic bag, listened to the neighbor's wind chimes, wrote a small note to myself in my old planner. Day 1, pills found in trash. No confrontation. Observe more. Yes, I started writing things down. Not for evidence. Just to keep track of what's real. Because when people start treating you like you're a ghost, the first thing you question is your memory. That night, as I was brushing my thinning gray hair, I overheard a phone call. Rachel again. Talking to someone. Probably her sister. Her voice sharp, annoyed. She just sits there. She doesn't talk, doesn't help. Doesn't do anything. What's the point? A pause. Then laughter. No, David won't say anything. He's scared she'll cry or something. Ugh. She's just in the way. In the way. I remember once, when David was 7, he built me a card house on my birthday. It fell over in 2 seconds, and he cried like the world had ended. I told him, "Darling, nothing beautiful lasts unless you build it on a steady table." I think I'm the unsteady table now. That evening, as I lay under the thin throw blanket they gave me, too scratchy for comfort, I thought of my mother. Her hands were cracked from soap and hard water, but her voice was always silk. She used to say, "Grow old with grace, but don't confuse grace with silence." I'm not ready to be silent. Not yet. The click of the kitchen lock was louder than I expected. At first, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. That my mind, tired and brittle, was turning shadows into stories. But the next night, the sound came again. Clear. Metal sliding into place. I walked over, my old slippers shuffling across the wood floor. My hand curled around the knob. Locked. Not broken. Not jammed. Just locked. I didn't knock. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I turned around and walked back to my room. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. Hunger is just noise, I told myself. Pain with a clock attached to it. The next morning, when Rachel finally opened the kitchen door, She didn't say anything. She simply poured herself some lemon water, took a selfie with it, and walked right past me without looking up from her phone. David wasn't home. Of course not. He was always gone by then. Early shifts, long commutes, even longer silences. At lunch, I tried asking gently, "Rachel, did you lock the kitchen last night?" She looked up from her tablet. "Yeah. I've started doing that. You've been eating too much sugar at night, and it's messing with your health." I blinked. I haven't had anything sweet in days. She gave me a bright, practiced smile. The kind people wear when they think you're too slow to challenge them. Well, better safe than sorry, right? I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I'd learned something. She wasn't just careless. She was intentional. That night, I wrapped 2 crackers in tissue and hid them inside the hollow of my jewelry box. I filled an old thermos with tap water and placed it beneath my bed. If they wanted me quiet, I could be silent. But I wouldn't be stupid. 3 days passed this way. Click. Shuffle. Crackers. Thermos. Silence. Then on the 4th day, I made a mistake. I tried to carry the laundry basket from the washer to my room. I didn't ask for help. I didn't want to. But my knees buckled halfway down the hall, and the world tilted just slightly. I hit the ground with a thud. The basket tipped. Clothes scattered. I reached for the wall, but the pain in my hip flared like fire. My head was spinning, my palms scraped raw. For a long moment, I just lay there, gasping. Then footsteps. Rachel. She stepped over me. No gasp. No concern. Just annoyance. "You really need to stop doing things you can't handle," she muttered. And then she walked into the kitchen. The door shut behind her. A moment later, click. Locked. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not until the front door opened, and I heard another voice. "Eleanor? Oh Lord, what happened?" It was Mrs. Green, my neighbor from 2 houses down. She knelt beside me faster than I expected for someone with 2 replacement knees. "Did you fall?" she asked, helping me to sit up. I nodded, still breathless. "Laundry. I thought I could manage." She looked down the hall, then helped me to the armchair. "You shouldn't be doing laundry alone. Where's Rachel?" "In the kitchen," I said. She didn't see me. Mrs. Green's mouth tightened. "I've worked in senior care, Eleanor. I know when something's wrong." I looked at her, eyes stinging. "It's not always this bad," I lied. She just nodded slowly. "Sometimes it only takes one bad week to break a person." She stayed for an hour, made me tea, and brushed the dirt from my knees. Before leaving, she gave me a soft smile. "If you ever need a place to go, or someone to talk to, my door's always open." I didn't have the strength to say thank you properly, but I made a note of it later in my planner. Day 4 fall. Kitchen locked. Mrs. Green came. First visitor in weeks. Later that night, as I lay in bed nibbling the last of my hidden crackers, I thought about something I'd nearly forgotten. My late husband, Walter, had started a small pharmaceutical fund before he died. Something he set up with a lawyer friend from church. He'd told me once, "It's not much now, Ellie, but one day you might be glad you have it." I hadn't touched it in years. But maybe it was time to find out what it was really worth. Because maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to keep swallowing this silence. There's something delicious about being underestimated. Rachel thought she'd won. So did David, in his quiet, cowardly way. They believed I was too old, too slow, too broken to matter. But I've learned something over the years. When people stop watching you, that's when you can start watching them. It was early Thursday morning when I pulled out the dusty green file folder from my old cedar chest. My fingers, stiff with arthritis, struggled with the clasp, but eventually it popped open. Inside were neatly labeled envelopes, Walter's handwriting on each one, bank documents, an old trust account, a faded business card that read, "Daniel Graves, attorney at law, estate, trust and elder planning." Daniel had been one of Walter's fishing buddies. They'd spoken in a quiet shorthand I never fully understood, mostly about stocks, new medication patents, and something called a controlled share fund in Walter's name. I never paid it much mind. Back then, Walter handled the money and I handled the people. But people change. And money, well, money remembers. I called the number. To my surprise, Daniel still worked at the same office. Eleanor, he said, stunned. It's been years. How are you holding up? I smiled tightly. Not as well as I'd like, but not as badly as they think. He chuckled. That sounds like the Eleanor I remember. What can I do for you? I'd like to update my will, I said calmly. And I need to know if the shares in the Tavicare Trust are still active. A pause. Let me check, he said. I waited. The ticking of the kitchen clock sounded like a judge's gavel in the silence. When he came back on the line, his voice was different, lighter, impressed. Still active. In fact, they've grown quite a bit. Looks like you're the controlling beneficiary now. Nobody else has touched it in years. I swallowed. Good. Let's meet. We met at a cafe downtown, one that served warm cinnamon rolls, and remembered your name. Daniel looked older but sharper. He held my hand a moment longer than expected, his eyes full of concern. I didn't expect to see you like this, he said. You look tired. I'm tired of being polite, I said with a soft smile. We spent the next hour reviewing documents. I showed him the current will, outdated, messy. It still left everything to David. Not anymore, I said. Daniel nodded and began redrafting. I changed everything. The house. To the Brightway Children's Shelter. The one that took in my sister after she was abandoned at 14. My savings? To Lindsay, the home nurse who helped me through Walter's final days with more kindness than my own family. And the pharmaceutical trust? Remains in my name, untouched for now. Daniel looked at me over his glasses. Are you sure you want to cut David out entirely? I stirred my tea. He made that choice first. I'm just notarizing it. When I came home, Rachel was in the kitchen, singing along to a song I didn't recognize. Something poppy and mindless. She didn't notice the folder tucked beneath my arm. Where were you? She asked, not because she cared, but because control demands knowing. Out, I said. I needed fresh air. She frowned. You should have told someone. What if something happened? I smiled sweetly. I figured no one would notice either way. That night I wrote in my planner. Day 9 will changed. Trust confirmed. She's still locking the kitchen. But I've unlocked something better. The next morning, I overheard them again. David, quieter than usual. Rachel, sharper. I can't do this much longer, she hissed. She's just sitting there all day. The energy in the house is so heavy. It's suffocating. You said we'd take care of her, David muttered. Yeah, when she was useful. Now she's just dragging us down. I held my breath. Rachel continued. After Thanksgiving, we'll start looking at homes. The kind with full-time nurses. I already found a place. David didn't respond. The kind with nurses. I was being offloaded. I pressed my hand over my heart. Not in pain, just to feel it beating. I needed to remind myself I was still here. Still alive. Later that day, I called Mrs. Green. Do you know anything about Brookside Care Center? I asked. She gasped. That place? It's awful. They keep residents drugged half the time. And the food. Don't even get me started. Why do you ask? I smiled faintly. Just curious. Someone I know mentioned it. I didn't confront them. Not yet. There's power in pretending not to know. It gives you room to move. To plant seeds. To prepare storms. I began writing more detailed notes in my journal. Not just entries but records, dates, comments, what I ate or didn't, what was locked, what was missing. I took photos. I printed out my pharmacy receipts to show how long my pills had been refilled late. I made a file. I called it They Forgot Who I Am. And tucked inside it was everything I would need when the time came. On Sunday, Rachel made her famous lemon rosemary chicken. The house smelled like a holiday. She offered me a plate, not because she meant it, but because someone else was visiting. Appearances. Dinner's ready, she said with her plastic smile. Would you like to join us? I nodded and took the plate. I sat at the end of the table, far from the laughter. They didn't ask about my day. They didn't notice I'd changed my clothes, or that my hair was brushed differently. They didn't even glance at the small folder I kept in my lap beneath the napkin. That was fine. They didn't need to notice. Because soon the whole world would. It was the last Sunday of November when they told me. I had just finished folding the same blanket I folded every night for the last year. My fingers were slow but precise, something Rachel always said I was too old to bother with. David stepped into my room. He cleared his throat like a schoolboy about to confess to breaking a vase. We want to talk to you, he said. Rachel was standing behind him, her arms crossed tight. She was wearing one of her expensive yoga sweaters, the kind she only put on when she wanted to appear calm and spiritual. I waited. David avoided my eyes. We've scheduled a tour of a care center next weekend. It's a really nice place, Mom. It's just that this house is getting a little hard to manage, and you'd be more comfortable with nurses and other people your age. Brookside, Rachel interrupted. It has a great reputation. I tilted my head. Brookside? Isn't that the one where they sedated a diabetic woman by accident? Rachel blinked. That was exaggerated. I see. I folded the blanket again. So you're not asking. You're telling. David shifted awkwardly. We just think it's for the best. For who? I asked quietly. Rachel didn't answer. She just walked out. David lingered for a moment, looking at me like a boy caught with a stolen candy bar. I'm sorry, Mom, he muttered. It's just, Rachel's been under stress and… Don't worry, I said, smiling coldly. I've already made plans of my own. They thought they were in control. But that very week, I made my way slowly, deliberately, to the courthouse. Lindsay, the nurse I had written into my will, met me on the steps. She was still fresh-faced, with a heart too big for her small paycheck. I told her I wanted a witness. She agreed. Inside, I submitted everything. My updated will. My official declaration revoking all previous property transfers. My proof of ownership of the house. A signed complaint to Adult Protective Services, complete with photos, dates, and even audio from a small recorder I kept in my bedside drawer. Then I handed over one final envelope. A letter addressed to Rachel and David, written in my clearest, most graceful penmanship. If you are reading this, it means the time for pretending has ended. That night, the kitchen was still locked. But I didn't need the kitchen anymore. I had dinner with Mrs. Green. Over warm casserole and tea, she said. You know, when you first moved in with them, I thought it was sweet, 3 generations under one roof. But now I think you were the only adult in that house. I smiled. Well, I am the only one with a trust account and a will no one bothered to ask about. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. 2 people. A woman from Adult Protective Services, and an officer from the local precinct. I stayed in my room and let them talk to Rachel and David in the living room. I heard muffled protests, fake laughs, then louder voices as the officer read off parts of my statement. Locked out of kitchen, denied medication, verbal neglect. Rachel shrieked. She's exaggerating. David said nothing. Then the woman asked calmly, May I speak with Eleanor alone? I opened the door. She looked at me gently. Ma'am, do you feel unsafe in this home? I answered with a voice steadier than it had been in months. No, but I do feel unseen. And that's just as cruel. She nodded. You have legal options. I know, I said, handing her a copy of the trust and the new will. This house is still mine. They just forgot. By the afternoon, Rachel was fuming. She followed me into my room, her voice high and shaking. What the hell are you trying to do? Get us arrested? I looked at her slowly. No, Rachel. I'm trying to remind you that I exist. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. And you, I said, rising to my feet, have mistaken kindness for weakness. David entered behind her, pale and panicked. Mom, can we talk? Sure, I said, motioning to the folded letter on the table. Start with that. They read in silence. In it, I told them everything. How I had never fully signed over the house, how the trust was still active, how they were being investigated for elder neglect, and how they had one chance to walk away from this without a legal stain, by letting me live in peace, without interference. By the time they finished reading, Rachel looked ready to faint. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. She slumped into the chair. Her voice barely a whisper. I'm sick. David turned sharply. Rachel. She looked at me with eyes no longer cruel, but afraid. I've been hiding it. An autoimmune disorder. The treatments are expensive. I just found out last week. The room fell silent. I stared at her, my heart no longer angry, but uncertain. Then quietly she added, one of the few experimental treatments is managed by TaviCare. I said nothing. She blinked at me. You said you had a trust there. I walked to the window. Outside, the garden was blooming in small, stubborn ways. Despite neglect, despite the cold, I turned back to her and said, yes, I do. That night, I wrote in my planner. Day 17, she finally sees me. Not as a burden, but as a gate. I knew what was coming. She would ask, and I would decide. 3 days passed. Rachel didn't speak to me. She moved through the house like a shadow in silk, silent, pale, visibly thinner. The color had drained from her face, and the defiance that once stiffened her shoulders was gone. She looked like a woman unraveling. David tried to play peacekeeper, but every word he said fell flat. Mom, he muttered on the second morning, she's scared. She's sick. I looked at him and said nothing, because I remembered being scared too, on the floor, when my hip gave out and no one helped me. I remembered being invisible while my pills were tossed in the trash like expired milk. I remembered silence, days of it, while they locked me out of my own meals. And now here we were. The silence had changed hands. On the fourth morning, it happened. I was sitting at the small breakfast table near the window. The sunlight made the lace curtains glow like snow. I was sipping tea, real tea, not the stale discount bags Rachel used to give me. That's when she walked in. No makeup. No filters. No front. Eleanor, she said softly. I looked up. Yes, Rachel. She hesitated. Her hands clutched something, papers, maybe test results. Her eyes were red and heavy. She was trying not to cry. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you have no reason to believe that. But I am. I set my teacup down carefully. You're not sorry I suffered. You're sorry I have something you want. She didn't deny it. She sat down across from me, her hands shaking. It's called systemic vasculitis. My immune system's attacking my blood vessels. It's rare. It's aggressive. I said nothing. She continued. The only treatment with a shot at remission is through TaviCare. They only provide access to a handful of patients a year. I waited. And you, she whispered, are one of the few people with a controlling vote in their compassionate access program. Now we were at the center of it. No more pretending. I read about you in their annual report, she said, voice cracking. You're still listed on the board as a legacy member through Walter's Fund. I nodded. She stared at her lap. I don't want to die. I took a long breath, then spoke with calm I didn't fully recognize. Do you know how many nights I went hungry in this house, Rachel? How many pills I had to hide under my pillow because you tossed them like garbage? Her chin quivered. How many times I listened to you mock me like I wasn't in the next room? How many times you locked the door while I waited, dizzy and shaking, just wanting a piece of toast? She wiped her eyes. And now, I said, you want access to my medicine. She nodded. I let the silence stretch. Let her squirm. Let her remember. Then I said quietly, I'll give you what you need. But there are conditions. Her head jerked up. Anything. I held up a single finger. First, you write a signed, dated apology. Not for the courts. For me. I want every word of what you did to me in writing. No edits. No sugarcoating. She nodded quickly. Second, I said, you will spend 4 hours a week volunteering at the Brightway Children's Shelter. You will listen to stories that aren't about you. And you will serve someone other than yourself. Her lip trembled. Okay. And third, David will move me into the master bedroom. I will not live in the shadows of a home I still legally own. That one stung her. I saw it in the way she flinched. But she nodded. I accept, she said. I rose, slow but steady. Then I will call Daniel, I said. He'll put in the request. You'll get your treatment. But never again will you mistake my grace for permission. Rachel stood too quietly. She reached out like she might hug me. I stepped back. Not yet, I said. Earn it. Later that evening, David approached me while I was folding towels. Mom, I had no idea it was this bad. I looked at him. That's not true. You had every idea. You just didn't want to deal with it. He rubbed the back of his neck like a teenager. I'm sorry. You married a woman who treated me like a burden, I said. And you let her. But at least now you're seeing clearly. He sighed. She was different when we first met. Or maybe I was just too in love to see it. I gave him a long look. Love that can't see cruelty isn't love. It's blindness. He nodded. I'll move your things tomorrow, he said. I smiled. Leave the curtains. I like the view. 2 days later, Rachel brought me the letter. It was 4 pages long. She detailed everything. How she resented my presence, how she convinced David to isolate me, how she saw me as a roadblock to her ideal life. She wrote about the guilt she buried, the nights she convinced herself I was just old and not suffering. And then she wrote this. I don't know how long I have left, but if I survive, I will spend the rest of my time doing better, starting with the woman I nearly erased. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer, not for revenge, but as a reminder. Even the cruel can change, if the right mirror is held to their face. That night, I slept in the master bedroom. The mattress was firm. The room smelled of lavender and clean cotton. I stared up at the ceiling, feeling no pride, no smugness, only peace. And for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming of the past. The garden wasn't much when I first returned to it. The soil was dry, the flower beds overtaken by weeds, and the stone path had cracked in 3 places. But I didn't mind. I've always believed things that grow through hardship are more beautiful anyway. Every morning now, I tend to it. Not quickly, not like I used to when I was younger and faster, but slowly, gently, with intention. I rise early, wrap a shawl over my shoulders, and take my time pruning, watering, listening. It's not just the roses that are blooming. It's me too. Rachel kept her promise. She now spends every Wednesday afternoon at Brightway Children's Shelter, helping with snacks, cleaning toys, reading to kids whose parents never came back. At first, she looked like she was performing community service under a court order. Stiff, awkward, avoiding eye contact. But something changed after her 3rd visit. She came home quiet that evening, almost soft. She lingered at the door to my room like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how. In her hands was a crayon drawing. A little girl had made it for her. She didn't say a word. Just placed it on the small table beside my chair. I saw it the next morning. It was a bright sun over stick figure people holding hands. And beneath it, Miss Rachel is nice. I didn't comment on it. But I didn't throw it away either. David has changed too, though in quieter ways. He started making my breakfast again. Scrambled eggs, toast, sometimes oatmeal with cinnamon. It's not perfect. He still avoids hard conversations and says too much with his silence. But now, when he passes by, he rests his hand on my shoulder. When I cough, he asks if I need water. When the grocery list runs low, he adds my tea without being reminded. The guilt sits on him like an old coat, too heavy to take off, too familiar to throw away. I don't rush him. Healing doesn't come all at once. I know that now. One afternoon, as I watered the marigolds near the fence, a voice called out from the sidewalk. Your roses look incredible, Eleanor. It was Mrs. Green, waving from across the street. I smiled, wiping my hands on my gardening apron. Well, I've got time and dirt. That's a dangerous combination. She laughed. You've still got it. I looked around the garden and nodded. I think I finally have it now. She walked over and peeked over the fence. Rachel's still volunteering? Every week. Mrs. Green tilted her head. And you believe she's changed? I thought about that for a moment. She's learning what it means to be needed, I said. And how easily that can be taken for granted. Mrs. Green nodded slowly. And David? He's trying. That's more than I've seen in years. She looked at me, her eyes warm. You never raised your voice through all of it. Never called them out in front of neighbors. Never threw a fit. That kind of quiet strength, it's rare. I smiled. I didn't want revenge. I wanted proof that I was never the problem. And now, I have it. That evening, Rachel knocked softly on my door. Eleanor, she said. Yes. She stepped in, holding a small gift bag in her hand. I got this for you. I looked inside. It was a set of gardening gloves, soft suede, a floral pattern. Nothing fancy, but thoughtful. I know yours are old, she said. And I figured, if you're going to keep teaching me how to prune those rose bushes, I should at least try to get the right gear. I raised an eyebrow. You want to learn? She gave a sheepish smile. Well, I owe those bushes something. They're the only things in this house you've trusted with more patience than me. I chuckled. Meet me outside at 7, I said. We'll start with deadheading. That evening, Rachel knelt beside me in the dirt, her hands clumsy, her movements too eager. No, not that one, I corrected gently. That stem still has life. You only cut what's already gone. She looked up at me, wiping sweat from her brow. That's kind of deep, isn't it? Most truths are buried, I said. You just have to dig a little. The following weekend, David brought home a bench. He placed it beneath the maple tree where Walter used to sit with his crossword puzzles. There was a small plaque on it. I leaned in to read it. To the woman who grew through what others buried. For the first time in a long while, tears pricked my eyes. I sat on that bench for over an hour, the sun warming my face, the breeze carrying the scent of lavender and earth. I listened to the sounds of the house behind me. No yelling, no slamming doors. Just the soft hum of a home learning how to be gentle again. And now here I am. It's morning again. A soft one. The kind where everything is still, like the world is holding its breath. I'm sitting on my bench, a cup of tea beside me, and my planner open in my lap. I flip to the back, to the final entry in the section I titled, The Days They Forgot Me. But this time, I write something new. Day 56. I am no longer invisible. I am rooted. I am seen. I am home. And I close the book. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales.